Hi guys, so a lot of you know, if you're familiar with my channel, you've been following me for a while, that this is my go-to laptop that I always seem to use and hang on to. So this is the Core M3 6x30 powered Xiaomi Mi Notebook 12.5. Now it's got quite a few good features on here, very premium build, and this is the reason why I really kept it, because the keyboard's backlit, it's great. The touchpad as well is very good. A nice bright IPS panel that is glass covered. And of course, it only weighs 1.09 kilos, so very portable, very thin. And it has a Type-C port on there and one full-size USB 3 port and another one for HDMI out. So overall, it's a very good laptop. It's got a couple of things that I don't particularly like on there, that it's limited to 4 gigabytes of RAM. And then the battery life was only around 5.5 to 6 hours maximum, which isn't wonderful. So we now have the 2017 model. I picked this one up here from Banggood, and this has 8 gigabytes of RAM, the Core M3 7Y30. So it's going to be about 10% faster than that model, but the double RAM hopefully will make things a little bit faster. It means I can multitask a little bit more. Not only that, the wireless chip in this should be the Intel Wireless AC 8265, whereas the old model has the 8260. This one should be a little bit faster, a little more range. And the SSD is now 256 gigabytes, at least on the 8 gigabyte RAM version here that I have. Now, I'm not too sure whether it's going to be SATA 3. I'm hoping and crossing my fingers that it is going to be another Samsung PM961 SSD in there. So that's PCIe times 4, a lot faster, of course, than SATA 3. So I'll get this one unboxed here. We'll have a look at it. And of course, the design is going to be exactly the same as the 2016 model. So later on in my full review, I will do a lot of comparisons to see if the double the RAM makes a big improvement or not, and whether the newer model is really that much better and should we go for it versus the older and of course cheaper 2016 model. So let's get this one here unboxed. So it is completely factory sealed, which is great. They've got the seal on there and I can see that there is no cut along here. So no one has opened this box before, but what that means is I'm going to have Windows 10 in Chinese, so I will need to install my own copy of that. But we'll get this unboxed and take a look at that, and I'll do that later on. So, really well packaged up here. No damage to that. It comes in a wrapper as well. I guess that's to stop water damage. And that box looks just exactly the same as what I remember on the 2016 model. They made no changes whatsoever to the outer packaging. And note that on the back here, these seals are completely intact. So that just confirms again that no one has tampered with this. Okay, so nicely packaged up. Laptop to the side for a second. Here we have warranty card, and it's just some sort of structure manual thing. It's all in Chinese, so there's no point in me looking at that. What's more interesting is the power supply. And you can see that it's got a reasonably long cable on it. It's Type-C, and the maximum output of this is 20 volts, 2.25 amps. So very powerful, and it is actually quick charging. So it will fully charge this laptop in under 2 hours, which is really great. So I made a slight error. It actually weighs 1.06 kilos, not 1.09. And the thickness of it, you see here, comes in to be 12.5 millimeters, which is really good. Now that's without the rubber feet. If I include the rubber feet here, it's 15.1, so super slim. So the lid here is really firm. This is not going to press down and rub against the keyboard in a backpack. And I know because I've had this model here, you can see in the background for a year, and I'll put it in my bag, and there's no scratches, no issues at all with the build. On the right, we have a USB 3 port, then a Type-C. This is Gen 2 USB 3.1. It's not a Thunderbolt port, unfortunately, and being, of course, USB 3.1 spec, it supports data, charging, and video out simultaneously. Next to it is a status LED. So this will be red when you're charging, green once fully charged. So on the left side, all we have is a headphone jack that supports microphones and then a full-size HDMI out. Xiaomi wants you to buy the 13.3-inch version if you want an extra USB 3 port, as you'll see here. So it's a shame they didn't decide to add a SD card slot or micro SD card slot, or add another extra USB 3 port here. The design is exactly the same as the 2016 model. No changes there whatsoever, unfortunately. And for you guys in the comments that keep asking me, I don't know why this is important, but can you open the lid one-handed? Yes, of course you can on this lid. It's actually quite a loose hinge, but it's not loose enough that it's going to keep wobbling around. So up the top here, we have a 1 megapixel webcam, which might not seem enough, but it's actually okay, the quality of this webcam. It outputs 720p, 30 frames per second. This is, of course, what I have on the 2016 model. And left and right of this front-facing webcam, you can see tiny little holes there. That's for dual array microphones of reasonably good quality. Now, the display is fully laminated, so it's optically bonded, and that adds strength to the screen. It's very strong. There's literally no flex in that, and if you really pushed it, you'll probably end up cracking the screen. So yeah, it is really good, the build quality of that. And the hinge at the moment being new feels really good. It has loosened up a little bit after 1 year's use on my 2016 model, but I feel okay still, nothing really to worry about. So this is unexpected. Looks like I have the Core i5 7Y54 version. Now on the Banggood website, it says that it's the 7Y30, so looks like I do have the top spec one here, which is good. Now this chipset probably won't actually be that much faster than the 7Y30, but it does turbo a lot higher. But whether or not later on in my testing, whether we can take advantage of that higher clock speed, I'll of course have to test and find out. So this touchpad is rather large, it's spacious. I just measured it here. That comes in at 100 millimeters in width, which is great. And the texture to it has like a glass-like finish, which is really good. This is a Synaptics touchpad, so it supports all your Windows 10 gestures. Now there is no fingerprint reader on this one. That's exclusive to the 2017 13-inch model, as you can see here. That one's got the fingerprint reader built into it. So this keyboard is backlit. It's only got on or off backlighting here. And there is a little bit of flex, just like my 2016 model. This has not changed here. Unfortunately, they have not improved on this, but it's not bad. I mean, this is not a deal breaker at all. You can see a little bit. I'm pressing down quite hard here. So when you're typing away, there will be some movement there. So the location of the power button isn't in the greatest position there, but it does at least have a harder resistance to the rest of the buttons. So it's not as easy to press. If you do hit it, you shouldn't actually end up triggering it. So let's get this powered on now and check out what we've got in the device manager. So here we are powered up into Windows, and it started all in Chinese, of course, and I can't seem to get English on there. So what I'm doing right now, you can see at 10%, this is the upgrade. So I've entered in and put my own Windows 10 Pro license in. Of course, that's an additional cost. You don't have to do this, but what I'm trying to do now is just upgrade it from Windows 10 Home to Pro. Then I can install English, and that should hopefully be that solved. So I can keep the stock drivers. Now I've made a backup of the drivers right here using double driver. Those will be available on techtablets.com if you need them. So I have some good news and some bad news, and no doubt you're probably seeing this right here, and that is our SSD is SATA 3. It is not NVMe spec. Now of course there is another slot within this laptop, so we can put a Samsung 960 Pro in there if you wanted to, or the 960 Evo. Again, an additional cost to do that. So under the device manager, another slight disappointment here, and that is the wireless. Now, it's not really that disappointing because the wireless AC8260 is actually a really good chipset. That's not bad at all. Now, the 8265 is in the more expensive Mi Notebook 13.3-inch version, the 2017 model. So I feel that that is more steps that the marketing team for Xiaomi is trying to get us to buy the more expensive model. So if you want the faster SSD, get that model. If you want the faster wireless, get that model. So the RAM, I checked that out. 8 gigabytes of RAM And yes, it is running at 1866 megahertz. So that is the fastest supported speed there. Now the processor, of course, so you've seen it listed, hopefully it was there. The Core i5 7Y54. Well, it's a little confusing that they call it a Core i5 when, as I mentioned before, that it's really just a Core M5. That's what it used to be called anyway. Now looking at that screen, it's a little hard to capture on camera, but there is a little bit of IPS bleed that I can see on the right hand side, just down here. You probably can't pick it up on camera. Just around there is a little bit of that. So that's probably to do with the bonding process and pressure on the screen from the glass that is in front of this. Now this glass, it is scratch resistant, but I don't actually know what brand they have used. It could be Dragon Tail, it could be Gorilla Glass. It's really unknown at this point, and we've never been able to find out. They're not so forthcoming, Xiaomi, on what glass they actually use. So just a couple of sample images here. That the IPS has got deep blacks, and you've seen an effect on there. It's really hard to capture the screen, but it is a nice screen. Trust me on that. It's not bad at all. It's bright, it's sharp. It's not quite as good as the one in the 13-inch model, however. So good color reproduction here, and just a minor complaint with that bleed I'm getting around the outer edges. It's not really noticeable, only when the screen's completely black can you see it. So on the underside here, you can see we've got these 5 rubber feet there to hold it up off the ground, and you'll notice that there are 2 downwards firing speaker grills. Now these are AKG speakers. They've got Dolby Premium audio, and they do sound pretty good. So let's have a listen to them. So they have plenty of volume to them. There's some of the loudest speakers I have heard from a laptop from China, the smaller ones, at least 12.5 inches. It's definitely one of the better ones. Now there's a little bit of a distortion and vibration at 100% volume, and it lacks a little bit of bass, but apart from that, they are very decent speakers in this laptop. So the BIOS it has is pretty much locked out. It's this custom kind of menu system they've got set up in here. It does allow us to set a password in there. You can control a couple of options, but not really much. Changing the boot order, for example, is one of those. So I've got a Linux USB pen drive in here. This is Manjaro release number 17. I'm going to see if it's going to boot up and we can run that okay. So I couldn't get it to boot. It came out with this warning here, secure boot failure. Now I think I turned it off. Maybe I didn't. I'll have to check back on that. But it looks like at this point, we're not going to be able to boot Linux on this device, which is a shame. Now, how much faster is it than the Core M3 6Y30 model, which is on the right, you can see. So it gets around 1,000 points more single core score. Of course, it's got a much higher turbo, so that is normal. And then the multi-core score is also a little bit higher there too. Now, interesting to note that I did monitor the thermals just from this Geekbench for benchmark, and it's a little hard to see because it's small, but I've got up to 80 degrees already. Now, bear in mind that's stressing out only the CPU. So when I do some gaming, which will be both the Intel HD 615 GPU and the CPU being pushed to the limit, I do think it's going to get quite hot and toasty, but that'll be coming up in my full review. So a few surprises, both good and bad here. I did not expect to see the Core i5 7Y54 in there. Now I thought it was going to be the 7Y30, which is of course another model that you can get here with 4 gigabytes of RAM. Now that one's priced about $489 US. This is a lot more expensive. You're paying for that extra RAM through the teeth here, and this storage, this is retailing now for around $799 US, which is quite pricey when you consider. Okay, it's going to have a lot more performance because it has a faster turbo. So when it needs to boost up, just for a little quick short tasks, it's going to hit 3.2 gigahertz. The other model only goes up to 2.6. That's the 2017 model with the 7Y30. Now, the thermals concerned me a little bit. Just after running Geekbench 4, it did, during that test, hit 80 degrees, which is rather hot for such a short little test. So I will push it. I will probably do a gaming test on this and have a separate video to see just how hot it's going to get. Have a look at the thermals, because that's my main concern here. And then, of course, battery life. I'm not really too sure if it's going to be improved or not, because the battery capacity is apparently the same, which is, I think, 34 or 35 watt hours, which, you know, isn't the greatest considering the power that's got on here. So in my full review, I will cover in more detail the thermals, gaming performance. I'll test out some more applications. I'll have a look at Adobe Photoshop Premiere Pro, both of those applications, and see how well it runs them with the extra RAM, and a lot of comparisons to my 2016 model, because I'm personally interested in that. This is my upgrade of that otherwise brilliant laptop there. I really do like this series of laptops. I think they're offering a lot, and you have to consider this is Xiaomi's first attempt, really, because this design has not been updated. All they've done is just bump the specs here. So I'll find out whether it's worth getting this one or not. At this point, I can't really say, but I do hope to see you back with my final review of the 2017 highest spec Mi Notebook Air 12. So this one has 8 GB of RAM, 256 GB of storage, and the 7Y54. So if you've got any questions, please let me know down in the comments. Thank you so much for watching.